in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast, and having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high, and I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, look, it says right here, there's nothing to worry about. It won't be here for another 50 years. Hey, guess what? That 50 years has came and gone, and this baby's out there in the sky. They've been watching it. I watched it, and I can tell you, this thing has got so much trash coming around it. You know how we live in a solar system? We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. But I believe that instead of having dirt on it like our planet does and water, I think this thing is just a big, bright reddish-orange iron ball, because it's giving off all this red iron oxide dust out into the atmosphere. When we thought at first it was just a teeny little red speck of fuzzy red dust in the distance, but over the years as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about '08, we could see this thing like it was across the street, and we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction, and you could see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing in this mess will hit it.
You don't know. We don't know until it gets
hidden heavenly body right here in our solar system. Evidence is mounting that either a brown dwarf star or a gas giant planet is lurking at the outermost reaches of our solar system, far beyond the planet Pluto. According to the British newspaper The Independent, the object is 4 times the size of Jupiter. Experts say the presence of such a massive object could explain why a barrage of comets has been coming from that direction.
We're going to stay on the air for as long as possible. All we can say is what we've been repeating all morning. Get to any kind of underground shelter.
There seems to be some serious observation going on in the southern hemisphere and leaks coming out all over the place. It does appear that groups of military and professional astronomers are openly active, let's say, at the Wormwood location in Australia. Well, of course, that's what I've been saying all along. The indicators were all there, and now there are reports that a mini solar system is coming into ours. Basically, you are on your own. Be prepared. That's the best thing I can tell. I would suggest that, number 1, you need clean water. Number 2, you need your own supply of food. And number 3, you need some basic first aid equipment. Number 4, you need some health maintenance natural products. Years, as I've advised people through this era of awaiting a extrasolar system object, and by the way, there are many of them, there is not just one. This is what scientists are starting to find out, and of course they're not telling the public. The southern hemisphere, of the number of astronomers down there looking at what they are calling a mini solar system moving into ours. This is what apparently Harrington saw back in the early 90s, and the point is, forget about dates. As I said last week and the week before, don't worry about dates. Or don't worry about internet chatter. Don't think you're going to all of a sudden wake up someday and hear on the evening news that, gee, a big object is coming in, and here's the date it's going to be here, folks. That is not going to happen.
We'll remind you as the date gets closer so you can stock up on snacks and beverages, but a comet is coming, a big and brilliant comet arriving in November 2013. It could potentially be 15 times brighter than the moon and visible in broad daylight over the U.S.
If planets exist, we are not alone in this solar system. The story of the planet, as told by the Sumerians on their 7 tablets of creation, begins 4 billion years ago, when our solar system was much younger and our own planet Earth did not yet exist.
The surviving historical records of the Sumerians reveal the story of an intruder planet, Nibiru, which appeared out of deep space, drawn into the center of our solar system by the planetary pull of Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter. On an opposing orbital path with the 7th planet, a planet referred to in Sumerian records as Tiamat, Nibiru's new orbit around the Sun placed the 2 planets on a collision course.
The astronomers look for this planet. They call it Planet X. They mean maybe the unknown planet, but it's also the 10th planet. They called it Nibiru, which means planet of the crossing, and the ancient symbol was the cross, not from Christian times, but from 6,000 years ago. And they say that this planet, the 12th member of our solar system, has a very large orbit of 3,600 years, and every 3,600 years it comes between Mars and Jupiter close to us. And it is then, they said, that people that look like us, not with little horns or green, people that look like us started to come between their planet and Earth about 450,000 years ago.
14th and 1978, which was just about 6 weeks after we discovered the fact that Pluto has a satellite. Once you have a satellite for a planet, you can determine how heavy it is. It turns out Pluto was very much smaller and lighter weight than we had thought, which meant that Pluto has no influence, no appreciable influence on the motions of the planets Uranus and Neptune. At that point, we voiced the hypothesis that this means that there is at least one yet to be discovered planet in the outer reaches of the solar system.
Will he announce it? To me, it sounds like he's compelled to.
Well, that's my thinking, is because when it finally gets separates from the sun far enough that you can see it with your naked eye. Now, I've said I've gone out, my wife has gone out, I've got hundreds of pictures of 2 suns in the sky that I took myself. Now, if I can do that, then anyone can do that.
Também tá fazendo um vídeo. Vamos. Say hi. Parece muito que tem 2 sóis. Ali, ó. Ali tem os sóis. Ali tem outro. Gente, eu tô mostrando, ó. Um ali e outro ali, ó. Vocês acham que vocês só tem um só aqui em Nova York?
Só em Nova York.
Ali, ó. 1, Nós não estamos mentindo, é verdade.
And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken.
Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come? Won't you come?
Whole new meaning on that song lyric, Black Hole Sun. Scientists at NASA have given us some amazing images. And they've discovered there's actually an enormous dark hole over our sun. Corey Powell's editor-at-large, Discover Magazine, here to look at these images. Nice to see you, Corey.
Yeah.
What is this?
Weather map on the sun. You'll notice part of the sun is missing. So this is a picture of the sun in ultraviolet rays. What you're seeing is this is 3.5 million degree plasma erupting from the surface of the sun. This part that's missing, the reason it's dark, is that whole chunk of the sun basically ripped off, blew out, and is coming our way at about 2 million miles an hour.
Our way?
Our way.
That doesn't sound good.
Well, I mean, this kind of thing happens all the time, but you don't very often see something that big. So I'm going to go all Carl Sagan on you here for a second. So this is about 80 times as wide as the Earth. If you're looking at the Earth on this scale, it's about that large. So this is an incredible chunk of the sun that's flying out. What happens when it hits our planet, it causes auroras, it wiggles the magnetic field. The thing you really worry about is it can disrupt your GPS, it can mess with your communication satellites, it can mess with your power lines.
Is that like a solar flare? Or?
So yeah, so these hot spots are where things are, it's where the things are really kind of intense and bubbling. This is where it's basically reached the point where it just kind of completely blew off. You're actually not seeing the hot gas here because it's no longer on the sun. It's coming into our face.
Did we ever know this before, or did we not take note of it?
Well, we know it's really very recent that we've even been able to see these things, and so we kind of knew, you know, there's this constant low-level thing, you know, a few $1 million a year damages, more or less, just our solar satellites, power lines, things. We knew that the sun was messing with us, and we didn't exactly know why. Now you see why. And the real worry is, this is actually, believe it or not, this is a small one. This is a minor one.
Wow. Can you tell us what this means then?
So what this means is, this is what the sun does all the time, and we don't really know why it does it. There's an 11-year cycle of solar activity, and right now we're going into a time of peak activity. And that's when all those things I was talking about before, you know, we really need to watch for your power lines, your satellites, for all that.
But you just said something there. You said it happens all the time. If it happens all the time, is there a real risk to us? Well, or are we just noticing now?
Well, there's two parts. I mean, there's the stuff like this. Like I said, this is actually not even a particularly bad one. So this is what happens all the time that we weren't really noticing, that now we're starting to understand and forecast. But there are much more intense ones. There was a giant solar flare in 1962, right before we really had a whole lot of satellites, an even bigger one in 1859. Wow. And if something like that happened again, that could cause a global blackout.
You always talk about, you know, solar flares as the biggest danger on a large scale. So we will see. Corey, thank you. Excellent explanation.
Oh, well, thank you.
And we'll call you Carl Sagan next time, okay? Cool?
Yeah, millions and millions of Earths would fit in this picture.
Yeah, nice.
There you go.
Thank you,
yes.
Corey. All right, James.
A huge solar flare erupts on the surface of the sun. Less than a day later, and 93 million miles away, the wires that carry communications across the Earth begin to spark. Business grinds to a halt worldwide as wildfires are ignited by the smoldering lines. At the same time, colorful auroras light up the skies of cities around the globe. Earth has just been visited by the perfect solar storm.
The sun kicked up this just incredible solar flare and a massive amount of energy headed towards Earth.
Not only was this storm one of the two most powerful on record, it was also one of the fastest. Ejecting from a sunspot aimed directly at Earth, it raced from the sun to our planet in less than 18 hours.
it takes a really fast rocket ship years to get to the sun. This storm, this cloud of electrified particles, managed to get here in less than a day. That's incredibly fast.
Fortunately, the perfect solar storm took place in 1859, when the only technology vulnerable to the onslaught was the telegraph. Since the era in which we have become dependent on high technology, we've yet to see another perfect solar storm. The question remains, could it happen again?
What if we have another one like that? Can we have another perfect storm? Well, I'd say yes, we can. There's no doubt about that. The effects that would be on us today compared to 1859 could be devastating.
Our sun has a dark side. It's violent storms capable of taking down the electrical grids that power our daily lives.
Repair could take weeks, months, and even in a worst-case scenario, up to 10 years for a full recovery.
If you can imagine a world without electricity, you're really going back in time.
If it is in the kind of orbit that we describe here, it would have to be a planet that would have a mass something like 3 to 5 times the mass of the Earth.
According to the British newspaper, The Independent, the object is 4 times the size of Jupiter.
If it is in the kind of orbit that we describe here, it would have to be a planet that would have a mass something like 3 to 5 times the mass of the Earth. This would put it intermediate between the gaseous planets like Uranus and Neptune and the terrestrial planets that we have in the inner part of the solar system. So if this planet turns out to be in a 3,600-year orbit, then its mass will be correspondingly larger. But we're talking about something it's a perfectly reasonable kind of planet. It looks like a good, nice planet, small enough that it's not going to be completely enveloped in gas, so it's perfectly capable of supporting life forms of one kind or another. This one here is a map of the solar system as we know it. The inner planets, this is the orbit of planet Pluto. And this here is the orbit that I have proposed for the 10th planet. And here's where we think it is right about now in its orbit. This is your orbit for the planet, and showing that it would come out of Sagittarius in biblical time, and that once you allow for precession, it would be around into Libra by now.
Here's what's going on. Comet Ison approached and has now passed Mars. Mars went comet. What? And I observed it. I had other people observe it. And it might be one of the reasons that the government shut down. Because the coma around Mars is now extremely visible. This is an event we had not seen in thousands of years. I am amazed at this, elements that luminesce in green are carbon monoxide and arsenic and some of the other elements that are common in comet tails. But, of course, NASA had their little, it's ultraviolet light from the sun. Well, what's so special about ultraviolet light near Mars? Why don't comets do this in other places? Exactly. All the time. You know, their explanations are so stupid that they're first level thinking at worst. But at any rate, 2 days ago on the 30th, Comet Ison developed the sunward spike that I predicted. I said, yeah, it's going to start connecting, but it did. It was a visible, extremely visible sunward spike within the days of passing Mars. Right now, Mars is in the tail of comet Ison, and Mars itself has gone comet. I almost think, I mean, this is so important to hide this information from the public. It's so important to the so-called world leaders that I even have considered that the entire shutdown of the federal government is to hide the information regarding comet Ison.
You know, if we find that we are tracking literally thousands of asteroids today.
Estimates of how many objects exist, near-Earth objects, in the range of 140 meters or above, are between 13,000 and 20,000 objects. And so that's the number of which we've detected 10%.
Right.
That is the much more challenging goal which the Congress put before us, so roughly, to identify 90% of those by 2020.
Roughly 2,000 objects that are city destroyers we are not detecting. Is that roughly right?
No, more.
Roughly 2,000 objects that are city destroyers we are not detecting. Is that roughly right? No more.
The President has a plan, but that plan is incremental. And we can not like him, we can not agree with him, we can not do a lot of things. It is the best plan we have. And if we want to save the planet, because I think that's what we're talking about, then we have to get together, that side and that side, and decide how we're going to execute that plan as expeditiously as possible.
A fireball blazing across power lines just overhead, fueled by an electrical surge, strengthening and exploding.
What we saw was this fireball barreling down the power lines and emanating an extreme amount of heat that essentially forced us back inside because it was so hot.
Look again as the surge zips dangerously close. Griffiths consumed with worry about his 2 children sleeping inside.
I thought the house was going to explode.
There's been no official explanation of what triggered the fireball, but some experts speculate lightning started it and that basic safety mechanisms meant to shut it down failed. Susan Solney, ABC News, New York.
It is difficult, perhaps, for the new generation since World War II, accustomed to the myriad lights of their main streets, to realize that once the bright glow was dimmed, that in order to conserve coal, electricity, and manpower, while the final mighty effort was being made for total victory, it became necessary to turn the lights down low. The nation already had become attuned to self-imposed darkness through extensive blackout drills, which began before the war and continued through the grim days when civil defense became vital to the home front, to teach civilians how to protect themselves and their families in event of enemy attack. Americans went from temporary blackout to the brownout, to save an estimated 2 million tons of coal annually. Next, the midnight curfew, which went into effect February 26, 1945. The government order concerned principally nightclubs, sports arenas, theaters, saloons, bars, dance halls, roadhouses. But cooperation came from every source, from all who would show their patriotism while war communiques told of American troops outside Cologne, superforts bombing Tokyo, MacArthur's men fighting east of Manila, and war plant production at an all-time peak. Air raid drills, dim-outs, curfew. It was a time for serious observance of the regulations which had been set up just in case Americans should be exposed to the terror from the sky so familiar to populations overseas. Equally important was conserving materials upon which the war effort depended. To live for a while in darkness was preferred by all who fell under the shadow of a great war of survival. VE Day was the occasion for easing controls, and Americans rejoiced in the bright glow of a nation which could see lights once more.
Tonight's massive power failure in the East. Here is NBC News Washington correspondent Robert Abernethy.
Good evening. The northeastern United States tonight suffered its worst electric power failure in history. In the next few minutes, we hope to tell you in detail what happened and to pass on what little is known about why it happened. First, what happened? Just before 5:30 tonight, at 5:28 in New York and 5:21 in Boston, at the height of the rush hour, the lights went out in those cities and in most of the Northeast. Perhaps 30 million people in approximately 80,000 square miles were affected. There were massive traffic jams and confusion, especially at train stations. Thousands of people were trapped in darkened elevators. The New York City Transit Authority estimated that 800,000 people were underground in subways when the train slowed to a stop in the dark. Hospitals switched to emergency power. Candles and flashlights were at a premium. In New York, surgeons at St. Vincent's Hospital were in the midst of brain surgery when the hospital's emergency power plant failed. Police rushed an emergency generator to the hospital, and the operation was completed. Airplanes could not land at New York's major airports because of the lack of light and signals on the ground. They were forced to circle, flew on to Philadelphia and Newark, or later landed at their destinations, helped in by moonlight. Our company there, Consolidated Edison, now says it probably won't begin to come back until perhaps 3 a.m. And even then, there's doubt about whether capacity can be built up enough to handle the big early morning load. In New York City and other cities, there have been reports of looting. Police ordered anti-aircraft searchlights set up to flood Grand Central Station, Times Square, and other parts of New York, moving from building to building at a 45-degree angle, trying to spot any possible looters. At the height of the blackout in Boston, a riot broke out at the Massachusetts State Prison in Walpole, nearby. Between 200 and 300 inmates, more than half the population, broke out of their cells in the maximum security section of the prison and roamed the cell blocks, smashing windows, tables, and chairs. State troopers ringed the prison, waited, eventually used tear gas to try to get the men back in their cells. Governor John Volpe of Massachusetts ordered all National Guardsmen to report to their headquarters. Governor Nelson Rockefeller of New York ordered all National Guard units in his state on the alert. Now a report has just come in from the scene. Here is NBC's Frank McGee in New York.
Connecticut, parts of northern New Jersey, and the entire state of Massachusetts were plunged into utter darkness. For hours, millions of people in one of the most densely populated and civilized regions of the world were totally without electricity. For those hours, life was a confusion for some, a complete stillness in life for others. Federal, state, and municipal officials were shocked by the sudden blackout. In Johnson City, Texas, President Johnson ordered an immediate investigation into the power failure. He directed the Federal Power Commission to conduct the investigation, supported by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Defense, and other federal agencies. One major significance is that the power failure may indicate that the nation's power supplies may be extremely vulnerable to nuclear attack. Just last year, the Federal Power Commission reached the conclusion that it was unlikely that all power could be cut off in any area, even under nuclear attack. We're reaching you from New York under, as you can see, exceedingly strange conditions. This is an emergency arrangement. We're operating with mobile equipment and operating from even using candles as a light supply. In New York City, Governor Nelson Rockefeller has ordered local National Guard units to their armories, and the armories have been open to some of the several 100,000 stranded passengers in New York. We can, as you can imagine, had thousands and thousands of people stranded in the subways and in elevators. So far, there have been no deaths attributed to the blackout.
For a report on the federal government's role in trying to offset the effects of the power failure, especially on the national security aspects, here is NBC's Pentagon correspondent, Peter Hackus.
Within a matter of minutes, the Northeast blackout situation was being discussed in the office of Buford Ellington, who directs the government's Office of Emergency Planning, located next door to the White House. Ellington, in turn, was on a tie line with the Texas White House. President Johnson had first learned of the situation a few moments before, listening to a newscast while he was driving in his car. As the seriousness of the problem became apparent this evening, the president ordered the Federal Power Commission a thorough investigation. The president ordered the FBI.
If some of this, or even all of it, appears a bit ragged to you, I'm sure you'll understand. We here in New York are operating under extremely difficult conditions, even primitive conditions. We're using candles for part of our lighting system, and we have a tiny little camera here that's not normally pressed into service for situations like these. Many of the bars earlier in the evening were said to be closing down. Whether this was a voluntary gesture or whether the police requested it, we do not yet know for sure. Thousands, literally thousands of people have been stranded in New York, and hotel rooms are at a premium. There has been a brisk business in the sale of candles and flashlights, and there have been reports that some stores have increased the price of candles while others have cut them. But New York is indeed in darkness tonight.
In the area, traffic is moving, or was earlier in the evening, moving with remarkable regularity. There were policemen stationed on every corner, and of course the street lights were out. And the policemen did their best, and they kept it moving pretty well. The buses, of course, were jammed, and the taxi cabs at that hour usually vanish, and there weren't very many of them tonight. A few of them, the ones that were operating, had their off-duty signs on, and they had to take quite a bit of abuse from their prospective passengers, and occasionally a policeman would stop the off-duty taxis and force them to take people. People were sharing taxis, and also some of the bolder souls, perhaps those with the longest walk home, stop private cars and ask for rides. It's quite a ways from Times Square to the Bronx or Queens or Brooklyn, and a few of the drivers of private cars were willing to help at least a few people. On Fifth Avenue, it was a little bit different story. Traffic there was hopelessly jammed. It took you about a half an hour to move 4 or 5 blocks.
2.5 days. Tomorrow. He'll be there. No, I don't care about that.
What the hell was going on?
For some reason or other, there was a power failure in northern New York or southern Canada that cascaded down through the system.
The U.S. set up its honor system. Hydro One said, not here. PMO's office tonight says, might have been a fire at the Niagara Mohawk Power Station on the New York side that started a cascading catastrophe that cut power to millions. People poured out of offices and stores and restaurants. Those who weren't stuck in elevators were left to walk 50 stories down the streets, pedestrians, and then commuters. As you can see, subways is very hot, scary day. By 9 p.m. or so, you were watching us again in most of the region, Ottawa and Canada.
Hot Dog Man is very popular. So is the ice cream truck. I'm going to try and get to this intersection without getting run over. Maybe I should put my light on. Dead streetcars everywhere. Something going on. Young and Queen. Traffic moving along. Brinks truck not doing anything.
Millions of Americans are without power.
The sun's going down. It's going to get really dark and we're going to have to light some candles.
Are you doing nothing too? Nobody's doing anything today because there's no power right now.
No power. Nothing in here works.
There's no AC. Toilet doesn't work.
What are we supposed to do?
Where's everybody? We're stuck.
We got to get some water.
Wait your turn.
Daddy, when are you coming to pick us up?
The current blackout is the result of a cyber attack.
Why is nobody helping us?